May be seated. Ketiva tova, shana tova. In 2009, archaeologists unearthed an ancient synagogue in the city of Migdal on the Sea of Galilee. It was established over 2,000 years ago. How fascinating. The Jewish community of ancient Migdal built a synagogue at a time when Jewish ritual life was vibrantly observed and celebrated at the sacred altar in Jerusalem, just as the book of Deuteronomy commends. Nonetheless, just 100 miles away sits the Migdal synagogue. The huge Magdala stone there depicts the temple's menorah. This suggests that the synagogue was not trying to replace the role of the Jerusalem temple. Instead, it was built to enhance the lives of local Jews who were seeking meaning and spiritual direction. It would have taken the Jews of Migdal up to 2 weeks to trek to Jerusalem for a pilgrimage festival. Thus, a space was needed to provide an ongoing connection to God and to empower the Jews of Migdal to engage in Jewish living. In a surprising twist, archaeologists digging just 200 meters away from the Migdal synagogue found another ancient synagogue dating back to precisely the same period. Oh my. Do you remember the joke about the Jew who built 2 synagogues while stranded on a desert island, one to attend and one to never set foot in? Well, apparently that Jew was not stranded on a desert island. He lived in Migdal. Seriously, archaeology has shattered our understanding of the synagogue. We have now uncovered over a dozen synagogues that were in use while the Second Temple stood, not counting all the outside structures that were open structures that were clearly used for prayer and Jewish life as well. Scholarship today opines that virtually every Jewish settlement had one then. The Jerusalem temple simply had ceased meeting the needs of many Jews. For while it offered sacrifices to God, many did not find it elevating, meaningful, or relevant. A real need arose for local Jewish spaces that reimagined Jewish spirituality. The word synagogue comes from the Greek meaning place of assembly, or as we say in Hebrew, Beit Knesset. As its name attests, the synagogue functioned as a community center, housing the activities of school, court, philanthropy, and meeting place. The meta needs of Jews then remain remarkably the same today. Rituals and practices to dramatize deeply felt concerns. A place for establishing meaningful connections with people, to support one another and create a sense of home wherever we went. Establishing a microcosm of society where justice and compassion prevail. A place where eternal truths can be uncovered and enduring priorities can regain their proper focus. These meta needs can be reduced to the 3 P's: practice, priorities, people. Let's start with practice. The destruction of the Second Temple by Rome in 70 CE might have been a death blow to Jewish life, but because of the well-established synagogue, Judaism survived and thrived. But the purpose of a synagogue, including CAH, remains the same today as it did for Migdal. It is the place where we practice our tradition. We no longer observe from afar as spectators while priests offer a sacrifice, but a space where we practice together. It is the place where we celebrate the good and struggle through the bad with people supporting you through it all. It is the place where we engage each other with deep questions. It is the place where we can all express our acceptance of one another's humanity. In his book Outliers, The Story of Success, Malcolm Gladwell famously describes the 10,000-hour rule. That rule of thumb states that depending on the skill or work, it takes around 10,000 hours of practice to become adept or an expert. So we might reflect back. How much training did I get in living Jewishly? Well, let's do the math. If one attended religious school regularly for 10 years, with approximately 30 sessions a year, with each session some 2 to 3 hours, one will have accumulated roughly 750 hours of Jewish learning. Proudly, some teens don't stop there and continue their study in a Hebrew high school context so that by graduation, they've reached about 1,000 hours. To actually hit the 10,000 hour mark, one would have to attend religious school for about 134 years. I don't know how many of you liked it that much. So we can all agree, I hope, that religious school in no way prepares anyone to engage with our 4,000-year-old tradition in any reasonable or mature way. Rabbi Light, you work at a day school. I do not know how many hours a day your students spend in Jewish learning or Jewish living specifically. If you figure out the hours, please let us know. In any event, the 10,000-hour rule means that Jewish life needs a training space to empower, inspire, and prepare Jews to live proudly, joyously, and fully as adult Jews. One thing is clear. While we can teach efficiently, we cannot take shortcuts. Here's why. We are bombarded by information and encouraged to move through it quickly. Yes, we could learn to speed read, but studies show that those who read fast self-select texts that are shallower and simpler. Even professional speed readers understand and remember less and less the faster they read. Taking in complex information and internalizing it requires establishing a practice of slowing down and paying attention, allowing ourselves space and time to think, to inquire, to come back to it again and again, and ruminate on it. Jewish life, a life of spiritual and emotional power, requires just that, a practice. Not an occasional trip to Israel, not intermittent Shabbat dinners or once in a while synagogue attendance, but practice. Creating a habit of personal Jewish practice is precisely what the Jews of Migdal had in mind when they developed their synagogue. Creating a meaningful pathway for life requires regular, consistent, ongoing attention. As Ben Bagbag taught in the Mishnah, hafoch ba v'hafoch ba d'chol ba. Turn it over and turn it again, for everything is in it. Look into it, grow old over it. Don't be quick to move away from it. Ben Bagbag lived in the first decades of the Common Era, at the very same time as both Migdal synagogues were in operation. Doing something big, doing something meaningful, doing something exciting, doing something memorable requires practice. We don't have to accept sacrifices of animals as our thing. We Jews haven't done that for a long time. And there may be current practices or prayers that don't necessarily touch your heart. Some don't touch mine. But that is not the place to make excuse to have no practice. And it requires a resource like HaYam to ensure our practice engages purposely with tradition, even as we assure its ongoing relevance, to provide space for us to practice together, to learn from each other and each other's practice, to encourage one another in our practice and in our lives, and to hold each other accountable for showing up and putting in the hours we strive to attain the expertise and facility that all of us need to be empowered Jews. Practice helps us to uncover the Jewish values which can direct us in our daily lives. They are revealed to us as we study, discuss, and argue Torah. They are revealed to us as the prayers in our synagogue service encourage us to see God as a model to be emulated as we strive to be holy, igniting the divine image within us to live in more God-like ways. Judaism is rooted forever in the soil, blood. That is all practice. Now I'm going to have a word on people. Judaism is rooted forever in the soil, blood, life experience, and memory of the Jewish people. And because of our life experience and memory, we insist on living out our highest values with all people. On Sunday, we'll again read the story of the binding of Isaac. This year, I understand it as the story of a family undermined by an inability to share. They did not talk to one another, and they did not listen. So the story, on the one hand, helps us to understand the importance of having people with whom to share our pain and sorrows, as well as our longings and triumphs. On the other hand, the story underscores how essential it is that we listen for others' pain and that we do so with a caring ear and a kindred heart. But both hands point to how we live with other people. Here at HaYam, we have instinctively understood this story and have woven it into the fabric of our community. In fact, our mission statement has a section called Chesed, extending kindness, hospitality, and generosity to others. It states, we believe that how we welcome and care for those in our midst defines us. We are an inclusive congregation, and we treat one another with civility, respect, and kindness. We are aware of and grateful for our blessings, and we are committed to sharing and giving generously to others within our community, the greater Jewish community, Israel, and the world. Our beautiful mission statement is not a secret. You can find it on our website. So HaYam exists as a place where we come together as a people. Here we can be vulnerable with one another, accountable to one another, and ready to do sacred work together. We look to leave this world better than we found it by contributing goodness and seeking justice. So practice and people, now priorities. This past year, we explored the life and legacy of social justice icon Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel. Upon coming to America, he taught at Hebrew Union College in Cincinnati for their rabbinical program. What you may not know is that 148-year program is currently being phased out. As the debates swirl around this momentous decision, Rabbi Mark Wachowski, the associate professor of rabbinics there, stated something which resonates for me. He said, "What I see when I look around me is not buildings that gobble up a budget, but the concrete manifestation of our founding purpose." I feel this way about HaYam. We live out our purpose. We're a place for practicing tradition, for inspiring each of us to help us find our direction, for helping us to see and know that we are not alone, that we are a people, and for ordering our lives with priorities that will make a difference. Priorities. What are your priorities as we enter a new year? If you haven't yet thought about it, it's a very good High Holy Day question. What are your priorities for 5784? For me, I hope that Rosh Hashanah helps me to reconnect with enduring values, spiritual values, human values. These are the changeless realities in a changing world. The things one could cling to in a slippery time such as ours. The things that the teeth of time will not chew to pieces. We sometimes read a passage at our services from Rabbi Sidney Greenberg, Zal, that enumerates some of these eternal verities. They include the redeeming power of compassion, the healing power of forgiveness, the transforming power of love. These things endure. The nourishment that comes from beauty, the strength that comes from adversity, the joy that comes from generosity, these things endure. These remain priorities for me. So practice, people, priorities. And the three are actually one. Our practice reminds us to live out our priorities because they only matter when we are connected to other people, people beyond our immediate household. That is, in fact, how we matter and how we leave a mark. As you know, in this new year, we will have discussions about the future of our beloved congregation. Let us all ensure we can continue to provide space for ourselves to live rich, full Jewish lives. But this year will require our focus on which CAH practices continue to inspire and empower, what our community's priorities are and should be, and how we have solidified as a community, a people. And as we welcome the new year 5784, let us make the commitment to do everything we can in every aspect of our lives to ensure that it is a year of goodness and sweetness, and a year which inspires many good and sweet years to come through our efforts to maintain meaningful practice, to deepen our lives with other people, and to be guided by our deepest priorities. Ken Yehi Ratzon, so may it be.